And now for something completely different.
Unlocking human capital.
It feels like I never left.
Innovation loops.
Learning to speak in shorthand.
Wonder Twin Powers, activate. We have fun working together. Please note that you will be performing an experiment in the next 12 minutes. No Sloanies need be harmed in the course of executing this experiment.
I'm what you might call an overplanner. I locked in a 25-year education and career path based on a missing clothing size. You see, in the early 80s, they didn't make spacesuits for human beings over 6 feet tall, and it's kind of hard to be an astronaut without a spacesuit. Looking back, if I had one piece of advice for my younger self, it would be this: invent a larger spacesuit. It seems simple. So instead of an astronaut, a PhD in structural biology. Think of that as the non-squishy kind of biology that involves high-energy physics and supercomputers. Then big pharma, then a succession of biotech startups. I described my career path over the past decade as career Brownian motion, or job schizophrenia. You take your choice. Moving on from there, it became...
Your superpower.
Yeah. No, honestly, it was moving to MIT. I landed the job here as probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. Talk to me after our talk for those details, but the best part about this was it unlocked my superpower. Sorry, no radioactive spiders, no mechanized suits. This was connecting groups of people looking to make their organizations better. These days, since the Sloan, it's only been a year, so this part will be short. I'm still at MIT, now with the Quest for Intelligence, helping build out their corporate engagement program. Let's just say that suits and ties and computer geeks aren't always an easy match, but I feel like I've got a particular strength in translating across that barrier.
Like Erik and many of you, I've wrestled with the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I've cycled many times on this, seeking a sense of purpose and fulfillment. I did not have Erik's long-term view toward escaping Earth's gravity, instead made a lot of accidental discoveries. And first, I stumbled into cartography. Those are some of my maps. 5 major career switches, and I'm back here at Sloan, which surprises me too. This was thanks to a fellow alum who recommended the mentor role in action learning. And I discovered here an alignment of purpose that I thought was a myth. And the feeling of swimming with the current, being part of an organization that aligns with me, where the whole purpose here is learning, that sense of fit was not something I knew was possible, and I didn't realize for me that it was so centered around learning either. So meanwhile, I get to use my superpower every day, helping people get from point A to point B, or to be more realistic, figuring out what point B is. One of my roles here is advising mid-career students, helping them design strategic projects for their career transitions. And it was in doing that work and using my skill set in that I realized, light bulb moment, that my career transition proficiency could in fact be my vocation. So yesterday, making maps. Today, helping people navigate their career journeys when they don't know the destination.
So how did our paths cross? It was while I was working on my MBA here at Sloan that someone with a far better view of my nascent superpower than I certainly possessed suggested we talk. The idea was that we pair my connections at MIT with a program Melissa was building for the Sloan Fellows. I still remember that conversation so incredibly clearly, because in that half hour, I got to first experience the power of what I've since called the Sloanie shorthand.
So based on a shared education, we found that we could really skip the background and get down to defining the problem to be solved. Erik insists that at one moment, time literally collapsed. That conversation left us interested in creating a shared project. So last summer, we got together to brainstorm. This is the actual brainstorming.
To find something that we could both be passionate about and develop. What started as a joke, and honestly, as you've probably noticed today, most of our best ideas do start as jokes.
Sometimes they end that way too.
Quickly became the idea for an IAP workshop on career transition. We both certainly had the experience. Now we just needed to develop the curricula. We needed to decide, what could we say that hadn't already been said countless times before? What uniquely Sloan perspective could we bring?
Innovation loops, agile development, product design. That's where we started. How could we use those, and how could we apply those to the subject of career shifts? Furthermore, how could we move away from the conventional idea that a career shift happens through this deep introspective process, followed by an expensive quantum shift in employment? And how could we get people to just fucking talk to one another?
At first, it was complete chaos. A collaborative witch's brew, a splash of system dynamics, a dash of idea lab, a thimbleful of disciplined entrepreneurship. Brown, then deglaze. Simmer, reduce. Add a side of Scrum, bring in a bundle of 4 capabilities, and add a heaping tub of organizational processes. Just keep adding organizational processes to taste. Braise for hours.
By the end, we had a framework. A deliberate action-first plan that builds motivation through action with an emphasis on shifting one's mental model to test and accept new possibilities.
A plan, act, reflect engine, fueled by short, cheap experiments, a reinforcing feedback loop that surfaces assumptions and then uses those as more fuel for the engine.
A networking forward emphasis on talking and listening, both as prelude to experiment, but also as the experimental readout. In short, we had a roadmap for deciding what to do when you grow up. And in the most meta of settings, we would test and deploy our entire synthesis as an experiment during IAP this past January.
What started with 2 Sloanies can now spread to more. You're already part of this. You started as the audience. You are now participants in this experiment.
In your hand, you hold a card. Notice that one side is mostly blank, enticingly blank. We challenge you to do your own career experiment over this weekend. And we invite you to write on this card a sentence of what you will experiment this weekend.
Focus on short, cheap experiments. A weekend is absolutely perfect. While you could deploy this in your personal life, our examples are tuned to a professional setting. What if career shift isn't in the cards? Feel free to explore learning, improving, or adapting to a changing environment.
We ask that you take a small step in shifting what you do or who makes up your professional community. For instance, this weekend, for any interest area you choose, your experiment could be to crowdsource ideas for a way to further explore that. And push for a breadth of ideas here. A new committee at work, classes, conferences, vacation, side projects, volunteering, to name a few.
Test out your story of exploration. Try out things that aren't yet on your resume.
Seek out people or groups who can help you follow your curiosity.
Talk to others about their career changes, especially the shifts and how they learned.
Erik is doing his experiment right now.
Please be kind.
Sometimes saying yes can get you into trouble, or great fun.
Almost always.
Yeah. So behind what we're calling you to do this weekend, behind my career transitions, behind Erik's, is the research of Erminia Ibarra on working identity. And if you were in the career navigating session yesterday with Bryn, she mentioned this researcher. Working identity is how we see ourselves professionally. And it takes shape as we do things. So this is similar to how the identity of parent forms as you are doing the acts of parenting.
While conventional career advice has you look inward to identify a goal that you execute in one quantum step, Ibarra found that for people making significant career shifts, that this took place through action, in layers, allowing them to learn and refine their working identity. As an example, it was only through working at an educational institution that Melissa identified her fit here, and it was longer still before she adopted that working identity.
There are three components of this process: test, demonstrate, and connect. So first, try new professional activities, especially in small iterative steps.
Second, connect with new professional communities. These are people who are not anchored to your current working identity, and they can help you move into new territory.
Third, do things that are visible, that show others your new capabilities, knowledge, interests.
Laid over all three of these is making sense of emerging patterns through cycles of action and reflection. This is the career experimentation Melissa and I work on. We teach designing experiments so that every cycle contains test and connect, and in most cases demonstrate. 3 for the price of 1.
So in this IAP class, we had participants who were grad students, postdocs, staff, alumni. We had them doing all 3 components right in the classroom. So they would pick an experiment, validate it with a classmate, reflect, and identify their action plan.
And we had them iterate a lot. And while this was going on, we were running our IAP workshop as an experiment. So meta. And what did we learn?
That Erik never met a joke he didn't like. It's true.
In addition to that, we also learned that mindset shift is absolutely fundamental. We emphasized that the results of an experiment were the learnings. The students found that moving beyond the success-failure false dichotomy made it easier to take action.
Yes, taking action, even actions small enough to be in the classroom, boosted students' sense of motivation and momentum. Lastly, talking to people. We thought this was obvious, but we had so many positive comments on it positive comments about how running an idea through with somebody new, that itself had tremendous value.
We also heard relief that they weren't alone in their feelings of uncertainty and seeking. Talking to others was so powerful that we briefly considered naming our website justfuckingtalktopeople.com. And now, today, it's your turn to act and engage.
Impact. Help us tap human potential with people doing more of what matters to them. Magnify that across this room and beyond, and imagine what that unlocks for human potential. Take a moment now, got your pen, to write down your experiment for the weekend. Here are a few ideas just to sort of spark your thinking.
And we've got a bit of music while you wait. For those watching us,
here it is.
For those of you watching us on the live stream, feel free to write this down on any piece of paper you've got handy. I can't dance. Shocking. I'm gonna go inspect some work.
Yeah. And now, it's up to you. And share your stories with us. Help us build this further.
And finally, Sloanies, go forth and carry out small experiments. Thank you all so very much.